So the core of my question is a big kind of like block that I've been feeling for a while, because I've been listening to you for a while and I'm so on it and I so get it and I'm so with it. But I'm seeing this kind of like discrepancy, because I'm feeling that on one hand, I really know I can focus in the direction of things that I want, and I can see past the place that I am. I can really see the potential of things. But I've seen in myself a tendency to ignore some things that are, and in doing so, try to push them away, which makes them grow.
Well, everything you're saying is accurate. In other words, when you try to push anything away, there's no exclusion, so you just make it more. So anytime you try to push something away, you just introduce it in a stronger way into the equation, which causes more resistance.
Yes, and it builds and builds and builds.
Before you go further, we just want to insert an analogy, an example of something that everyone can relate to rather easily. Picture yourself tuning some electronic device, and while there is thought about it, maybe you're even looking at a gauge, and maybe you even know what frequency you're reaching for. So that's the thought. You're trying to find a specific frequency, but isn't the feedback to what you are finding even more important than the deliberate intention of finding it? Do you follow what we're getting at?
Yes.
We've been saying you create your own reality, and thoughts create, and you get what you think about whether you want it or not. So that's all thought, which makes you get a little worried about your thoughts. We see you thinking and then trying to take the thoughts back before law of attraction gets hold of it. Cancel. Well, we prefer that you understand that it's more like thinking and feeling, thinking and feeling, thinking and noticing, thinking and noticing. It's like any artist, whether they're painting or sculpting or even creating something musically, they are doing the thought thing, but then they are taking the feedback, and from the feedback they are responding with them. Smoother thoughts, more responsive thoughts. Yes? So this applies here, doesn't it?
Totally. Yeah, okay. I see that, because like I see when I try to drag, like there's a difference between feeling that and knowing where I'm gonna go.
But you see, you know what you're talking about, and this is the perfect time in this conversation for us to have this discussion. You are talking about what we were just talking about what am I under the influence of when I'm doing the thinking, when I'm taking the action. Because sometimes you're aware that it isn't going the way you want it to, and so then you start trying to figure out what to do to improve it, and you never get good answers then. And sometimes you're in the receiving mode, you're just feeling satisfied, and you're moving from the feeling of inspiration. But here's what's tricky for you, and it doesn't need to be. We're going to clear it up right now. You all really want to practice what the receiving mode from this receiving mode feels like, and what the receiving mode from something else feels like. You want to practice what influence you're under. When you feel an emotion, whether it feels good or bad to you, just ask yourself, is this a satisfying feeling or not? And once you figure that out, and that's so easy to do, then if it's a satisfying feeling, then say, I'm in the receiving mode, I think I will proceed. And if it isn't a satisfying feeling, then I'm under the influence of my own doubts, my own fears, my own worries, somebody else's paranoia, somebody else who thinks they know better than me, blah 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 blah. And the reason that this matters, this is the analogy that we've offered for years, and we like it so much. Esther remembers being in San Francisco for the first time and seeing those hills that people were actually driving on. She couldn't get it out of her mind. She couldn't believe that she was going to drive up that hill, and she couldn't believe she was going to drive down that hill. It was unlike anything she ever thought anybody should be driving on. And so we said, imagine being stopped at the top of the hill. You can see the bay way down there, way down there. So take your car out of gear, take the parking brake off, put it in neutral, in other words, get behind it and just bump it and see what happens. Just for fun. See what knocking your car forward a few feet will accomplish. Well, it's pretty clear what would happen, but maybe you come to your senses and you think, whoa, 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 whoa. So before it really gets rolling, you just stand out in front of it and you let it bump you, but it stops because there was so little momentum. It took very little to stop it. But you wouldn't want to be down there at the bottom at the bay trying to stop that car right before it went in, because it would take you in with it. So momentum is an obvious conversation, but most people don't think about momentum of thoughts. Thoughts, everything. Law of attraction causes momentum in everything, because if you hold a thought for as little, we used to say 17 seconds, now we're saying closer to 16 seconds, it's somewhere in there. If you hold a thought for as little as 16, 17 seconds, 16, 17, some 16, 16 seconds, if you're holding the thought for that long, another thought like it will join it. And if you now hold that thought, another thought like it will join it, until once you get over a little over a minute of that kind of momentum, now there's enough momentum in law of attraction to affect something that you will notice with your physical senses. It doesn't take much. Now most people think that that's too short of a time. For a while, when we first started talking about that, people were carrying timers around, and we encouraged them to cut that out. They're trying to hold a thought without contradicting it for a little while. The reason that that seems like an inordinately short period of time to most people is because most people do not hold a thought without contradiction for even 16 seconds. You've got this thought but going on because you've been trained to be so objective, so weighing the pros and the cons and the pluses and the minuses, that you don't really very often deliberately get a thought going. Well, that's why we don't want you to train your thoughts. It'll make you crazy. We want you to care about being satisfied, because that's the response to the thought, and just looking for something that feels satisfying, caring about being satisfied, which is the same thing as saying care about being in the receiving mode, which is the same thing as saying care about being in a vibrational equivalent to everything that you want that's in your vortex and your inner being. Oh, there's power in that. One who's connected to all of that is more powerful than millions who are not. There is so much leverage in your own absence of contradicted energy, and yet almost no one is working at that at all. They just sort of bumble through life and take life as it comes, and when something happens that is not satisfying, would you believe they keep talking about it? They keep talking about it. Keep it going. Do you know something could have happened to you 20 years ago? Remember that thing? And it would not be affecting your now vibration at all. It wouldn't even be in the mix if you weren't talking about it 19 years ago and 18 years ago and 17 years ago and 16 years ago and yesterday. And a lot of reason you talk about it is because you're trying to justify something, maybe, or maybe you're trying to entertain. But the point that we're making is you keep things that weren't satisfying when they happened active in your vibration, and they continue to not be satisfying, and they continue to pile up on you and be the reason that these new fresh things that you just found don't just flow instantly and easily into your experience. Life is supposed to be fun and fast. Yeah. All right, so now yeah, so I get all that, and I can feel when you sat down, you said, I have this big, maybe you used the word block.
I did, yeah.
Let's go right there.
Okay, so the block is, when is it advantageous to focus on those unsatisfying things that happened?
Never.
But
that's when.
But then how do you move them out of your experience? Because like I said,
can't move anything you're looking at.
But
it sticks to you like glue.
So I know that. But it's like, it's almost as if part of my awareness is focused on where I want to be, but part of it just does not let go, and it just like.
But we're explaining to you what you're doing that doesn't let it go. You can't look forward and behind you at the same time. Pick one.
But how do those things, how do they stay active then? Because I do so much looking forward.
The reason that it feels not just difficult, but close to impossible, and others are agreeing with you, what we just told you to do doesn't feel possible because law of attraction keeps bringing it to you. So you have to find a way of focusing in a way that law of attraction doesn't bring it to you, which means you've got to deactivate it. Well,
Deactivate.
when you decide to deactivate something, guess what you do? You activate it.
Yes.
So how do you deactivate something? By activating something else. Or reboot. Shut it all down. We are recommending a lobotomy. We are recommending a practiced meditation where you quiet your mind. It might take you a week to get so your mind is really quiet, but when you focus on some sound in a room, can you hear something in this room? Fan or dripping faucet? Just focus on something that doesn't take much thought, but that does require focus. When you focus upon something, and when your mind wanders, and it will, go back to focus on that. And when your mind wanders, and it will, go back to focus on that. And when your mind wanders, and it will, go back to focus on that. Usually within about 15 or 20 minutes, you can find a minute or two of a quieted mind. And when you quiet your mind, you stop all thought. You stop all thought. Now hear this. We have not said this clearly before. Remember those two parts of you that we were talking about, the inner being you and the you here in this physical body? You quiet the you's mind down. The inner being's mind is the only mind that is active. The inner being's mind is focused unequivocally, inextricably, only completely, specifically upon everything that you have become. So when you quiet this for a brief moment in time, you are that. In other words, you just move right there. Your vibration rises. It's like the frequency of your inner being is a magnetic point of attraction, and when you are not offering any opposing vibration, off you go right into vibrational alignment with that. And then you're in sync with the new intention, and that old thing that happened that was active before is not active now. Now, will that one time cause all propensity to think about it to not exist? No, because there's still some momentum. Something's going to happen. You'll hear a song, somebody will say a word. There are all kinds of triggers in your environment that could potentially take you back there. But if you quiet your mind often enough for a week or two or three or four until you establish a new vibrational relationship with the desire part of this subject rather than the lack of desire part of this subject, now it's easy. And then the conversation that we have, instead of it being, oh, Abraham, I just can't stop thinking about that, the conversation will be, I can't even remember the last time I thought about that. It's like it just goes away. It literally changes your frequency, and therefore your perspective, and therefore your past. Really, it changes your relationship with your past. You're now, there are 15 analogies flooding into Esther's mind simultaneously. Your now moment in time overwrites everything that you've lived before. Now that feels confusing to you because you think you have memory. You don't have memory. What memory is transmitting and receiving mechanism. In other words, you don't have a storage cabinet that's storing all this stuff. You are transmitting and receiving vibrations and translating them into what you are calling your memory or your knowledge. Sit with that just for a moment. It's really chewy. So in every moment, everything's being written over. Do you have any computer programs like that that override everything that came before? In other words, the now just keeps updating. You make a change and it changes. You know what we're talking about? Maybe not. So I'll give you another analogy. So in your now, in alignment with source, your vortex, which contains all that you've evolved to, becomes dominant, and everything is overridden. If you have more debt than you have money, overridden. The money overrides it. If you have a bad relationship and a good one in the vortex, overridden. We're not kidding you. You can stay current with your now vibrational reality. So after a while, things that used to be active that you kept updating, you're no longer updating, so they don't keep coming with you, and in their place is the new perspective. More important, the new point of attraction. The way we've said it to you that might be easier to hear, although we really liked what we just said to you, everything is always changing, but for most it's just changing to the same thing over and over and over again, because you keep having the same thoughts about the same sorts of things, and so you just keep becoming new in the old way. And then it feels to you like things aren't getting better. Well, things are changing, but they're changing to what's active in your vibration. Is this making sense to you?